Hi children, welcome to ICT Learning. So this is the third chapter for grade 11 and I am planning to do few videos for this topic. So this is the first part of that video series, right, for the chapter 3. So if you haven't watched my previous videos, please go to the playlist and watch. There are a separate video playlist for each grade from grade 6 onwards. So you can watch them. So this is for the grade 11. Targeting national syllabus local O levels, right? Okay, we'll start. So this chapter, the internet and the electronic mail. So topic is bit tricky, right? I would say, because it's not a very matching one because internet and one of the services internet is providing. So the topic I would prefer if you have just internet, it would be great. But here the chapter name is the internet and electronic mail. So remember, electronic mail is one of the services provided by the internet, but this chapter will cover a lot more than that, right? Okay. So before jumping to internet, right, do you remember about computer networks? We learn about computer networks. So if you don't remember these things, please go and check what is a computer network, right? Computer network is collection of computers and other communication devices are connected with each other, right? Around in one place, right? So if you think about internet is the largest computer network available in the world, right? So we learn about topologies, we learn about different communication modes and all these things regarding computer network. So I'm not going to revise those things. If you don't remember, please go and refer because this is about computer networks, right? Internet is so having one, it's not only limited to one or two computers, right? It's globally, lot of networks, computer networks are connected. So networks of networks, we would say, right? So it's the fastest available way to share information with the community globally, right? If you have heard, we call internet as the information superhighway, right? So with the internet, now everything is very easy, right? You can connect to any person in any country, right? So because of the internet, actually, the whole world has become a global village, one single village where you can send a message to anybody in Australia within like few seconds, right? So this communication has been evolved mainly because of internet, right? So internet is rendering so many services, right? We learn about that. And remember, internet is not having any particular one single owner, right? There's an unprofitable organization called the Internet Society, right? They are not the owners, but they will like look after and they will be acting as an in charge of ethics and principles related to the internet, right? And we have something called protocols, right? Set of rules, which will help to maintain internet operations. Because there is no owner, it doesn't mean we can do whatever we want, right? We have to adhere to some rules and regulations and ethics and principles. So otherwise, this internet won't be evolving like this, right? So when you access the internet, right, from your computer, you will become a part of the internet itself, right? Now, when you watch this video from YouTube, now you have already become a part of the internet itself, right? So you can obtain any information you want from the internet after that. So when you talk about internet, right? So there are so many resources available in the internet, right? Because you know, internet is so powerful because we can obtain anything, any information from internet, right? So to transmit this information from one computer to another, I told you there are some protocols, and from that protocols, HTTP, we call hypertext transfer protocol, right? Please remember these protocol names. In this video, we will be discussing few protocols as well in this chapter. So you remember those protocols. Protocols are a set of rules, and HTTP is mainly important when we talk about internet, because that is the protocol we use to transmit information among computers, right? So the the internet is having so much information, right? So I'm repeatedly telling this. And remember, internet and World Wide Web are two different things. A lot of students think internet is World Wide Web. No. Internet is the largest network available in the world, right? But World Wide Web, WWW, is one of the main services provided by the internet, right? So the information in World Wide Web, right, we can see them as websites, right? We have so many websites, right? And in websites, we have web pages, right? So to identify unique resources in the internet, in the websites, we use URL, right? What is that? Uniform Resource Locator. So name itself is telling, okay, URL helps to uniquely identify various resources in websites. So this is in the internet, right? In the internet, when you want to find various resources, you should have a URL, right? So what is a URL, right? You can see this in the address bar of a web browser. When you, for example, if you go to the web browser, what are the web browsers, you know, right? Google Chrome, right? Internet Explorer, Mozilla Firefox, Safari, Opera, right? All these things are like web browsers, which we use to browse internet, right? So when you go to the web browser and when you search something or when you type a URL in the address bar, this URL formats, it can be seen. Now in the picture, you can see in the address bar, you can type the web URL and you can go to that particular unique resource, right? So if you think about this URL format, so this is very important thing, right? So here we have HTTP. So I told you HTTP is one of the protocols which is very important. So this is the main protocol. And we have www. So this is World Wide Web, right? And this whole part, right, based on the resource URL will be different, but these two will be same. We have HTTPS for more secure purposes, for like payment transactions and all, we use HTTPS protocol, but HTTP and HTTPS both are protocols. www, this is also common for all the URLs, but this part, the domain name, will be differ based on your website. And this part is basically where this particular resource is located, the path for this resource. So what is the resource? This is the resource, ICT.pdf. So my resource is a PDF file. And this is the place where it is, right? And this is the domain name. And we will learn about something called top level domain in next few minutes. So that is actually LK. LK we call it as top level domain. Okay, so this is the domain name and LK will be top level domain. So they have given few other URLs. Now you can see HTTP, www, that is common as I told, right? But these domain names will be different based on different. Now this is for Ministry of Education. This is the National Institute of Education, NIE. Right? So this is the Department of Education, right? Education Publication Department. So based on the different websites, we have different domain names. So then we have to learn about IP address. So this is also very important, right? Now, IP, right, or Internet Protocol addresses are very important to individually identify every computer in the internet. Now, I told you in the internet, there are so many computers are connected, right? It's a network of networks. A lot of computers and other communication devices are there. So you have to identify each of the computer uniquely. Otherwise, you cannot communicate. For example, it's like the address of our home, right? So if you want to send some letter to somebody, you should know the address of that person. Otherwise, you cannot send that, right? So similar to that, each of the resource, each of the computer in the internet is uniquely identified by the IP address. So IP address are having this format, right? So we call this as dotted decimal notation. So these are decimal numbers. We have 4 decimal numbers separated with a decimal point. So this number, now for example, this is 172. Here you can have a number from 0 to 0 to 255. For example, you can have 200, 4, 5, 15, 16, like that. Any value can be here. should be belong between 0 to 255, right? So like that, you can have the IP address. Now, if you want to know your IP address of your machine, what you have to do is you have to go to the command prompt, right? Hope you know how to go to the command prompt, and you have to type the command ipconfig. Now you can see the image, right? ipconfig. Then you can see what is your IP address of your machine, right? And remember, this IP address is not a static one. That means it is not like fixed for every day, right? It will change. Now your IP addresses will be changed. It's dynamic, right? Based on the availability, you will get this IP address dynamically. And now your service provider, internet service providers like Mobitel, Dialog, SLT, like that, they will give you the IP address, right? So when we talk about IP addresses, we have actually two versions, right? IP version 4 and 6. Actually, what happened was IP version 4 was the initial thing. Now you can see how many numbers you can go for. Here you can have 256 into 256 into 256 and 256. So when you multiply, you can see, okay, these are the number of IP addresses available with this IP version 4 notation, right? When this IP addresses was initially introduced, people thought, okay, that is enough. But with the mobile phones and now, if you think about your home, right, most of the houses will have more than 3 to 4 devices connecting, right? Now, because of that, we need so many IP addresses. So IP version 4 is not enough to cater all the requirements, right? That is why we have, like, the world has gone for the IP version 6, but it's not a quiet replacement. That means all the IP version 4 is now not gone, right? Both are used in parallel mostly, right? So check your IP address, right? You can check the IP address of Google also. How to do it, right? You can type this command ping and type google.com, right? Then you can see, okay, this is, now can you see this is the IP address of google.com. So if you take this IP address and if you type this in the address bar, still you can go to google.com, right? I will talk about this into more detail when we talk about DNS servers. So remember, servers are having static IP addresses. What are servers? Right now, we are acting like client machines, right? Our IP addresses are changing. It's dynamic because nobody wants to have a fixed IP address because nobody's like looking at me. But if you think about facebook.com, right? So many millions of people connecting to the Facebook, right? So the Facebook server should have a static IP. Otherwise, when I go and try to connect to Facebook, it will tell, no, this IP address is not available. Then client will be like upset. So server machines should have a static IP address, right? So I talked a lot of things about it. Now here in this picture, you can see we have internet service providers. Who are internet service providers? Right? Mobitel, Dialog, Airtel, Hutch, right? So these are the Sri Lankan internet providers we have who provide the internet connection and other services. So they will have a pool of available IP addresses with them. So when you connect, an IP address will be assigned. Another person can join, and that person will also given an IP address. So you can see here, the IP addresses are taken from a pool. So definitely your IP address will be changing. It's not a static one, right? Okay. So here again, they talk about internet service providers. They are the companies who provide the access to internet, right? And definitely they will charge you, right? The ISP or the internet service providers will be charging for the internet connection, right? Then when we have something called domain name, right? In the early example, I talked this part of the URL is domain name, right? So this GOV is representing government and LK is representing the Sri Lanka, right? So this LK part we call as top level domain. Remember the last part of the domain name, that after the final decimal notation, decimal point, we call it as a top level domain. So domain names are given to identify all the websites. Now you have google.com, facebook.com, we have Gossip Blanca, Hero Gossip, or youtube.com. So many websites are there. So all these websites have a domain name, right? And usually, if you would think about the top level domain, when the internet was initially started and all, they used to follow this. That means com is only used for commercial. Org is for non-profitable organization. Edu for education. Net thing, .net is for web stuff. So, but nowadays, a lot of people are going just for the commercial one, .com. Nowadays, we don't follow this top level domain very much, like particularly to one field kind of, right? We have top level domain, but this practice has been just gone for some level, right? And these are country domains, right? With that now, for example, LK will tell it's Sri Lankan website, like that. So IN for India, AU for Australia, JP for Japan, UK for United Kingdom, like that. Based on this top level domains, sometimes you can decide, okay, what is the country for it, right? So the domain at the rightmost corner of the domain name, I told you that is called top level domain. Now, for example, .com is top level domain. This google.com, this full thing is the domain name. From the domain name, rightmost corner, one we call as top level domain. Now in this one, LK will be top level domain. In this one, now remember, this is the resource. This is the path to the resource. And this is the domain name, nie.lk, not the www, that's not the domain name, nie.lk. So from that, LK is the top level domain. And in this one, unicode.org, that is the domain name, because this is the protocol, this is the www. This is the path to this particular resource. This is HTML file. So from this domain name, .org is the top level domain. Hope you understood, right? So what is this domain name? I would like to explain a bit more, because in the DNS servers, we will learn about this. But before jumping to that, I want you to give a small background for that. Now, for example, I initially told if you type ping google.com, right, you can get the IP address of the Google server. Okay, we have a Google server IP address. So if you type that IP address, still you can go to the Google website. And we have www.google.com also. There's a domain name also. When you type that also, you go to the same website, right? So why we have two things? We have IP address, we have a domain name, right? Actually, IP address is the one which is uniquely identified the Google server. But humans are very, for humans, it's very hard to remember the numbers. Even for the phone number, remembering your phone numbers, do you remember all the phone numbers of your friends and parents and family and all? No, it's very hard to remember numbers. Especially for humans, it's very hard for remembering numbers. So that is why we have something called google.com. Okay, we can remember that easily. So if you type that, still you go for that Google server. So I will tell how this mapping is actually happening. But remember, for the Google server, there's a domain name, google.com. There's an IP address also. So from both of that, you can navigate to Google server. But why we have these two is because humans don't like, and they don't have the skill to remember all these numbers, all these IP addresses they cannot remember. So remembering domain names is much more easier. That's why we have domain name. So how the internet works, right? So now same thing I explained, right? Now I told you for humans, remembering numbers is a bit hard, and always it will cause for errors, right? That is why when we decide our URL, now think you are going to develop a website, right? When you are deciding your URL, make sure you don't have much numbers there, because people people don't want to remember numbers, right? So when you enter the URL to the browser, right? So what happens is this request, you should convert it to an IP address. So that conversion actually happened with the DNS, domain name system servers, right? Domain name system servers, right? So what happened, for example, if I type www.yahoo.com, what happened is this request will be first sent to the DNS server, right? And it will be translating that to particular IP address, right? Then only the particular request will be gone to this particular server, and it will render the relevant website. So it is happening very quickly. Actually, we don't feel the difference as well. Now see, user opens the browser, enters the URL, right? www.google.com. So here there is a resolving part happening, right? So there's a DNS server, right? And DNS server will resolve this this URL into an IP address. Now browser has the IP address, right? IP address is a 4 decimal numbers, right? Separated with the decimal point. Then browser will be sends this HTTP GET command to this particular web server. So then web server will return the relevant website, and web browser will render that particular HTML page. Web browsers are like Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, Safari, Opera. So all these web browsers will render that particular HTML web page for the user. So that is how DNS server is resolving these IP addresses. So as I earlier told, right? So the internet is not having any single owner, right? So these things are having something called protocols, right? Protocols are a set of rules or laws operated on internet, right? So please remember these 5 protocols for your exams. Now, HTTP already we discussed about how HTML documents exchanging is happening using HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol. And TCP/IP, another protocol, basically for the transmission control protocol and internet protocol, IP. So it's about IP addresses, right? And FTP, file transfer protocols, right? When you want to exchange files, FTP protocol is the most important protocol we have to follow. SMTP, this is about electronic mail, emails, right? So simple mail transfer protocols, when we are sending an email, when we are receiving an email, in the back, you have this protocol followed, right? SMTP. ICMP, Internet Control Message Protocol, right? So this is mainly for error handling, right? Informing and controlling messages when there are errors, right? So please remember these protocols. So many MCQs have been coming from this. So please remember these protocols. A lot of students feel HTML and HTTP, they have some issues with this, right? HTTP is the protocol, right? Hypertext Transfer Protocol. HTML is the language we use to develop web pages. So in this one, actually they are telling about WAN, right? Hope you remember wide area network. We have 3 types of networks, right? LAN, MAN, and WAN. WAN is the most the network which has been spread over largest area, right? So actually WAN or the internet is based on client server model, right? So what it is telling, right? So that means all the computers in the internet, right? Either they are servers, either they are clients, right? Now, what is this server? For example, think about the Facebook server, right? So you have a server. I told you servers will have a static IP address. And we have so many clients, right? So clients are like us, our machines, right? Which are not very powerful. And we just cater for one user, usually, right? But when it comes to servers, they have a separate OSs installed and they are more powerful. They have more processing power. They have more memory, right? They are more powerful machines, which can cater so many clients at the same time. Okay. So that's why either one of all the machines in the internet, either it is a client or either it's a server, right? So server is actually the computer that distributes resources. Right? When a client asks for a resource, the server will give the resource for each of these clients. Okay, so that is a server. So there is not only one server, right? There are so many servers. Like Google itself will have so many servers to cater all the requests. Why? Because so many clients are requesting. Do you think, like, can you imagine how many users are searching things in Google? Right? So you should have server farms, we call. We should have so many servers inside a server farm, so which can cater all the client requirements, right? So what happen is the client will ask something, will request something, and server will respond something, right? So the clients are not very powerful machines, but they are usual machines, right? We have something called peer-to-peer architecture as well, where peers are like equal ways, like equal memory, equal processing power machines are communicated with each other. That is peer-to-peer. Peer means like our friends. No? So peer-to-peer architecture is like similar machines are communicating. But here it's about client-server architecture, where server is more powerful machine, right? So in here, we should remember that the transfer of information between servers and clients, it's two-way, right? Server will respond for a client request. So they're explaining two words here: downloading, uploading. What is downloading, right? So when you retrieve information from the server to our client machine, we are downloading a movie, right? That means we take that information from the server and we keep it in our machine, right? We will store it in our machine. We call it as downloading. What is uploading? Now, the information we have in the client machine, we can transfer or we can provide it to the server computer as well. So that is uploading. Right? Usually uploading you may not have done, I'm not sure, but downloading, yes, you have everybody, I think you have done it, right? Downloading. Now there are two different things also I want to talk about: streaming and downloading. Now, when you're watching my YouTube video, it is streaming, right? If you want to skip the video quickly, you can go for next minutes, right? And you don't have a physical copy of my video in your machine. But think about torrent. Now you have a movie. Now think you can stream a movie and watch. Now, if you have Netflix, you can watch TV series and all while you're streaming, right? Similarly, you can download with the torrent and all. You can download the movie and keep a file at your machine and watch also. So there are advantages, disadvantages in these two things. What are the advantages of streaming? Right? You don't have a physical space in your machine to waste, right? It's already saved in somewhere else. So you can just watch. The advantages of streaming. What else? You can, you don't have to have the full video with you. You don't have to wait until the full video is downloaded to your machine. You can watch the last 5 minutes if you want. Okay. So those are the advantages of streaming. What are the advantages of downloading? So if you download a movie, you have a copy with you. If you want, you can share with your friends also. And if you have the copy with you, you can watch at any speed or at any place or like that. But the disadvantage is you have to wait until the full movie is downloaded to your machine to watch the last 5 minutes. Not like streaming. Hope you understood another thing I want to explain with the same thing, right? So when it comes to internet servers, they have given you some examples, right? Web server. Right? Web server will be storing web pages and websites, and they will provide these to client computers. Mail servers, Gmail, right? Storing electronic mails and providing them to the client computers. Outlook, Gmail, right? Yahoo, those are mail servers. DNS server, we already talked about this. We have IP addresses, we have domain name. So the translation between these two, it's like a table mapping. Now think you have IP address set, you have a domain name set. So the domain DNS will like map these two, right? So when the user type the URL, the DNS server, that means domain name system server, will translate this URL to the IP address. Okay, hope you got it, right? So this is the first part of chapter 3. I will do another video for the second parts. Yeah, hope you understood this. So if you really learn something, or if you have any comments, please do comment. So your comments are very valuable. So that is so encouraging me. That is why I'm doing this free service also, because of your comments, right? Please comment. Please share these videos with your friends, and please subscribe, because if you subscribe more, it will add some value for me, right? That is why I'm really doing this. Otherwise, no point of doing these videos if students are not watching these things. So this is kind of a service for you. So thank you very much.